All right, so here we go. So, regarding this point of the logic system, and going back to the point of self forgiveness, one of the most interesting things that I noted when I went back into, in the last couple of years since I left Destiny, I have looked back from time to time into the recordings of Bernard Pullman, the blogs, the interviews, the Destiny material. And I go back and I like to look at it and dissect it with fresher eyes and like a more critical mind than I used to have, and being out of it. And one of the moments, the most telling moments for me was when I found this blog in the Bernard's blog. I will show it on the screen here for the video. It's creation's journey to life dot blogspot.com, and this is Bernard Pullman's blog. And on Friday 15th of June 2012, he published this blog, Day 62, the Destiny Portal. And the first statement that he writes, I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the destiny portal opened in one breath and ever since functioned with the ease of one breath in and out the body, while the body remains in full awareness, continuing with all natural daily functioning. I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that any communication with the dimensions beyond physical perception cannot have defined personality as it were on earth, as personality is body bound in the flesh as memories, as proven by a child having to be trained to be a person. So he goes
Mhm.
on and he talks about the portal. And the first statement was so telling to me once I was no longer a Destiny cult member, because to me, this is just a person using forgiveness or self-forgiveness as a brainwashing tool, as a tool or a method where they tell you to repeat this statement so that you accept uncritically this this supposed fact. So he's giving
Yeah.
you a fact and he's telling you, but add the self forgiveness and accept it and allowed into it and accept this fact. And for me, it's the same as me telling you, okay, I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that 1 plus 1 equals 4, or 2 minus 1 equals 100. Something that doesn't make sense, that's not valid. But if I write the forgiveness before that, then I can just claim it's a fact. And for me, when I look at this, I could also say, "Oh, I forgive myself that I've accepted and allowed myself to not realize that elephants can fly, right? And that
Yeah.
just I'm just an what Bernard's doing here is asserting something and using, in a way, I would say, guilt, because you're forgiving yourself for like not realizing this before. So some level, I see this as guilt, and through that, accepting this as a fact.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
tell me more what you think of this.
Yeah. So you can see that the way it is used, so the effect or the function of self-forgiveness in this statement is to acknowledge as a fact the next statement, which is that you have accepted and allowed. So you're already past the point of considering. You now have forgiven yourself, so you've already acknowledged, and you have also removed any resistance towards that statement.
Yes.
So that is
Yes.
what self-forgiveness does as a function. It removes the resentment, it removes any resistance. So it bypasses your critical thinking basically, and then then so it's like a functional line, like a computer code type of thing is how he thinks about it. That's also his Virus Free Mind book is also a lot like that.
And Techno-Tutor
So
as well. The way they market it as well, it's like it's supposed to bypass the conscious mind, right? The bypass. Yeah, go on.
yeah, so basically that. the thing is that it's not that I'm criticizing self-forgiveness or forgiveness, because these are very important concepts and well fleshed out, in my opinion, well fleshed out. There's a lot that you can read about it that is not of Desteni, that is not used in this way, and it's very important things to do, and it's very different when forgiving someone or self-forgiveness. And self-forgiveness, when you see the fleshed out concepts and how it works, is not some code or line that you write down and then it's done. It's not like that. It's a process that involves understanding. It's a process that over time you let go of things that you blame yourself for, through understanding, through knowing things that you can control and can't control. And it's this difference of things that are up to you and that aren't, that actually makes that creates the insight for change in behavior. So you want to understand the situation where you were in, and you want especially to know how you got there. So the why, the causal factor, so that you can prevent certain outcomes and not just change your perception of that situation. So that is basically what I have to say about that.
I mean, and extra to what I said about this blog in particular, third point here, it says, I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to not realize that the Desteni portal in functioning has remained stable in the one breath movement in and out the body from its opening in 2005, without being influenced by anything that will normally diminish human body functioning in this world. So I do want to point out that, nowadays in Desteni, they would say, the self-forgiveness, focus on yourself, focus on the points that you can change within yourself, like yourself. But the way I see this is like, here, Bernard, I don't see him doing this like, oh, this is Bernard's particular personal process. He is just saying that, oh, this is a fact. And in my view, he is actually using the forgiveness to talk to people. So, and through the forgiveness is kind of, like we said, bypassing. It's easier to remove people's resistance. He's actually telling story to people, basically, or telling facts. He's not actually, what Desteni now claims they are. Oh, we're just like a self-help community type of thing. Just about myself, just about my process. But here, Bernard, I don't see him saying, oh, I forgive myself for, the way I behaved this morning, for example, with my daughter or my son or or the neighbor or whatever. Just something personal directly applied to his experience. I see him as just presenting a fact and trying to instruct the people, but very, it's not clear, right? That it's not entirely
it's clear. A ritual. It's a ritual, and the ritual is for rewriting your experience of yourself, your own memory, your own experience, and changing your perception. So changing how you perceive. Yeah, it's basically just rewriting your experience in a way that you are the only one that creates it. And in a way, you can say that you always have some involvement in your experience. But the thing is that through understanding, through a wider context, through seeing what is the causal factor, so the why, not just that you have an experience that you change your perception of, and that change your view of how to change that just from yourself, but you want to understand the situation as well, to see things that are not caused by you. And it is just a way for members that join to rewrite their experience in a way that they don't actually think about stuff that in a more in a wider context, and yeah, it keeps you busy. It might give you a kind of a feel or a buzz that like you feel some kind of control or you feel some kind of release. But this is just a temporary kind of thing. It's not a long-term solution to anything, and it's not increasing your understanding or your knowledge of what's going on.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I shared in our last conversation, it could even do the opposite, where it could even distort your understanding of yourself and your reality. So
Yeah,
it could even do the opposite.
I mean, a lot of this is like you identify a destructive behavior and you go to the causal factor of that behavior. Like, why are you doing this? And that, and for some, I think my recommendation is if you really have these kind of problems, please try to find help as well. Don't be ashamed to seek for help or find a good psychologist and actually get to the bottom of it with someone that has experience in the field, has verified methods that can actually help you, instead of creating some kind of fiction where you're creating this kind of identity, this kind of new you that has now changed, that's now forgiven self, and
Transcended,
that
perfected, etc.
and that is the harmful part about it. So you're you have some kind of idea that now, yes, now you have changed, or now something is different, but you haven't really touched. You're basically just overwriting yourself.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And it's about understanding as well, like where does it come from. And once you do find the causal factor, once you do find the trauma, or you find the reason why, then it's not so easy. It's not like you write some line like, I forgive myself. No, I mean, that is a process where you have to access your emotions again, go back to that moment. And in my opinion, that is best done with a professional. So that is what I want to say about that.
And I mean, a lot of the premises behind this process are also found in the book Virus-Free Mind, where the human mind is in many ways equated to a computer, which is very questionable, the way that Bernard analyzes the mind and compares it to computer.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it, right? So there is a part of us that is more and more computer-like. That's because we adapt to the technology that we have invented. That does not mean that we are the technology that we've invented. It's just a small part of it. And as I said before, like, creativity is incredibly important for so many things. And it's what distinguishes us from AI and computer language. It's the creative part and the way to oversee and to see things from a different angle. And that part is so important to train with others. So not to give attention disproportionately to one aspect of your mind, of your brain. So if you don't mind, I want to go into the little bit about the logic where we ended off in the last series.
Sure, go on. Yep.
Yeah. So see, when I joined Desteni, I was very much into the keeping an open mind, right? So, and there's a lot of things that on the internet is just a toilet for a lot of crap, theories and stuff. So you can go endlessly with that. But keeping an open mind when it comes to Desteni, which is also what they propose, like, hear the message, have an open mind. And the thing is that the more you get into material of Desteni, the more, and you have an open mind, so you are considerate, you're not rejecting it, and you're just considerate. For you, in reality, in practicality, that means that you're basically you're basically holding it as true until proven otherwise. So it's basically a reverse kind of thinking, where
from skepticism.
Because instead of having verification in any kind of way, you kind of keep on the kind of facade, the kind of charade. You keep kind of taking in, and at some point you start kind of building on what's already considered or basically taken as true until proven otherwise, and then there forms a logic system, and it becomes a belief. It becomes also a identity. It becomes your practice as well, through the rituals of Desteni, and then it becomes part of you. So it's now something that you do, and it becomes harder and harder to get out, to step back from that, because now it is something that you are. And if you would step back, that would mean that you're lost again. You would kind of lose, feel like a loss of meaning, right, to your life and to what you're doing. So that it becomes very difficult. This is the difficulty of a lot of cult members.
The way you said it in our last conversation was accepting things as true until proven false. Or like, it's true for now. You know, like you go into Desteni and you have this so-called open mind, but in that process, you're just accepting something as true until proven false. And that differs from skepticism. And then you mentioned how the using of information, the more you dig into that information, all what you're doing is just using that information to confirm what you already are building up as a belief that which comes from that information. And you said that becomes a logic system.
Yeah, so that's it. A logic is nothing more than that. Logic system is built around a premise, and then built from that, you get reasoning that might be that might work, that might be sound, to call it like that. It might be.
It might sound like it's sound, right?
No, sound like whole, like it might be correct in itself, but it is in itself. So when the basic premise is not true, then the thing breaks. And you don't want to go there. You don't want to go to the point where you say, hey, what if this isn't true? Because that means you have to let go of all of that, including your now formed identity around that belief.
Yeah, the cult identity.
So that is kind of like the it's a kind of screw that gets harder and harder screwed in, and then at some point, and I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah, this is interesting what you said about the logic system, because I the way I like to call it is not so logical logic system of Desteni, right? Because once you start to dig into the premises or just ask very basic questions, a lot of it falls and doesn't really stand. But when you are there, you can say it makes sense. And they use a lot this thing with common sense. Oh yeah, well, it makes sense. It's kind of logical. So with Techno-Tutor, I saw a lot of this in their marketing, where a lot of people get impressed by what the marketers, the salespeople of Techno-Tutor present as logical. Hey, this is common sense. This is logical, and people are like, yeah, no, for sure, this makes sense. There's not everybody, right? There's people who are more intelligent and can ask better questions, but those that are easily impressed by the claims made by this salesman can easily just think that that's logical, but it doesn't mean that in reality, like if tested rigorously, their claims are logical, or their system is logical, or the belief is logical.
Yeah, and to add to that, so they have this 1+1 kind of. They had this period where they said like 1+1. That's kind of their thinking, just simple logic.
Oh yeah, like it's all logical. So, logical.
Yeah. Right. So say 1 represents a fact, 1, and +1 is another fact. But 0 + 0 always remains 0, and 0 times 0 always remains 0. So this is what logic is. It is, if there's no 1 in there, then the whole thing breaks, and it's just oversimplified, I know, but in a sense, that is what is happening in simple terms, and
reductionistic as well. Yeah, there's many claims that we can make about, let's say, religion, society, education, and I saw that a lot with Techno-Tutor. They make claims, right, about education and children and parenting, They're very simple, they're very reductionistic. There's no way you can really argue against it. But at the same time, it's kind of tricky the way that like you said, the statement in itself may make sense, yeah, but the framework around this statement that they claim is logical or common sense, that's what's really flawed.
Yeah. I mean, it's based on a belief, and yeah, you can reason and build logic around it but it's not going to make it any more true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So something else about reasoning is, like, for example, they say, like, I'm the example of that Destiny works and stuff like that. You see, the thing is that if you have some kind of change in your life and you attribute that to Destiny, like self-forgiveness or whatever process they're talking about, who said that that change that you went through wouldn't have happened anyway? And besides, if you joined some UFO cult or some random whatever, maybe you've changed even faster. That wasn't true. So the fact that you change, or that something happens, or something positive happens, or whatever, doesn't mean that it's true. And that is also very, very good to realize.
The attribution, right, of whatever change or result. It's like I don't know if you've heard about this effect when, like, when people notice the 11 everywhere. I think this, like, 11 is like a mystical number, and suddenly they get this idea that this is a special number. It has some, I don't know, spiritual power or something, or mystical effect, and they suddenly start to notice it everywhere, and it fits into the idea that this is special, that it's, that somehow this number is there's like a bigger mystical reason why you're seeing 11, but it could just be you're just generally more attentive to it as well. And I saw with Techno-Tutor, there's an over attribution of whatever happens in your life that's good. You're just gonna say, well, it has to be Techno-Tutor, and this happens a lot. Like, people enter this state of almost a weird sort of hypnosis where everything somehow relates to this Techno-Tutor, just like this 11. You see it everywhere. Everywhere is just the result of Techno-Tutor. And, with the process as well, Destiny, everything becomes like this magical effect that your process of the programming is having. But it could just be yourself suggesting yourself.
Yeah, and you're also unconsciously tracking a lot more than you're aware of. So that means that you might be looking at a clock and seeing that number every time, but that also, it might also be that your timing is kind of so on that you kind of look at that moment because you're kind of keeping track of time, and you might be surprised how precise that can be, how you are timed on the clock and on the timing, and So what I'm saying is that I mentioned him, Derren Brown, where he shows that people are much more predictable than you want to believe, because they're just following patterns, and these patterns can be predicted, and see that you conform to a certain pattern or a certain rhythm or a certain code or a certain computer or technology, right? Your phone or your computer doesn't mean that you are that, or that it has some significant meaning, because you are an organic organization, and from nature we know that it is innumerable, and meaning that it's not like some kind of there's always kind of like a variation. So you have pi, you have all these kind of measurements which are more about proportion than about some exact number that enumerates what it is. It's about the proportion, and I don't really personally believe in the kind of matrixy reality or simulation kind of theory, but this is all personal. I mean, I'm not criticizing people that do. But for me, like, when you say it's a simulation or a system, I mean, a simulation of what? Like, that's the immediate question that I have then. But anyway, that's a bit off topic. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually an important point that I want to make with what you just said. Um, I think it's important for us also to add, I say, parenthesis, and in these conversations that we are having and that we'll be having more of, that we are not like at least in my case, I could say I'm not in any way through criticizing Destiny's portal story and all of this rejecting the possibility that there's supernatural events, that that there's spirits, that there's the afterlife. This is not something that like belongs to Destiny. And also the point of like forgiveness and self-forgiveness you mentioned earlier. uh I think self-forgiveness is a wonderful, interesting concept, and very, I think, relevant to mental health. Forgiveness as well is something that's I think valuable
Personal
for
growth,
humanity, for
personal
personal growth,
growth.
for humanity,
Yeah,
for morality, for for just existing in this world as humans, right? But this does
yeah,
not
but
belong to
yeah,
Destiny. When we are
no,
criticizing, when we criticize the whole like portal or channeling of Destiny, we're not saying that channeling is impossible or that there's not an afterlife. Like I personally do not deny. Some people, when they leave cults that are similar to Destiny, they maybe they just go into more of like a belief that there's no such thing as an afterlife, there's no such thing as gods or anything supernatural, everything is material. And that's fine. Everyone has their own like approach to reality. But for me it was very important to realize that um Destiny does not in any way own any of these concepts. And when you realize that, for me, that was very freeing, because then I didn't feel the need to thank Destiny for, there's people who have been hurt by Destiny, who have left the cult and who have told me, well, even though I had these awful experiences, or even though I think they are a cult or whatever, they're brainwashing people, they say, "Oh, but I'm still grateful because they introduced me to self-forgiveness," or I left the cult, but I still think that there's good in it. And at some point, I also said the same thing. I still think there's some good in it, even though they're, a cult, and I don't have a good view of it. And there's like a lot of toxic dynamics going on in the community, but the moment I realized they do not in any way, I mean, in many ways, they plagiarized, they borrowed, they grabbed from different, books and thinkers and religious systems and groups, and they grabbed from a lot of beliefs already, and a lot of books that you mentioned to me as well. I know that Bernard, I was told that Bernard had Scientology books in the farm, in his like library of books. So this is something that somebody who lived at the farm for some time told me. And so they grabbed from many sources because supposedly they research all these different sources. So my point here is that they do not in any way own, and I do not have to be thankful. Anybody who leaves Destiny, I would say you don't need to in any way to be thankful for anything they brought to you, because yeah, sure, they grabbed it from a different source. They just came to present to you. But the problem is that what they presented to you was a distorted, hijacked, modified, wrapped up, structured um, system of belief, and they have their own agenda. So you don't need to be grateful. I don't need to be grateful to them for introducing me to this concept of self-forgiveness, because that's been going on already for a long time in,
yeah.
with humanity.
I would even take it further, say that it is not self-forgiveness what they're using. So
Oh, yeah. We could
yeah,
even say, yeah,
it's not
exactly.
it's not
Yeah.
that it's just a kind of psychological trick. That's it. And another thing that I want to mention um, is that the the process that they're talking about with self-forgiveness is not is not at all reachable in any way. So you can go infinitely with this process, and when there's no clear cut goal like being perfect or self-perfected, you can do that all the time. And perfection is not something that is a goal. I mean, if you work hard at something, you practice, it becomes, there's perfection, or you come close to perfection, and that's beautiful. But it's not why you do it. You do it because you like it, you enjoy it, you're passionate about it, and then it can get very, very good, very, very, very much closer to perfection. But to have it as a goal, like to become perfect, or to become this thing, like putting like holding in front of your child that they can become a genius. I think it's a very diluted and very abusive idea to put in the mind of a child. Because just statistically, pretty much no one is going to be a genius. So that means that you're giving your child something they will be.
Almost no one, yeah.
Yeah, so that means that child will be almost certainly be disappointed, and never reach up to any kind of idea that has been given to him. So
yeah, well, that's interesting for sure, as this is a lot of the agenda and the promotional agenda of TechnoTutor now, and they're selling a very basic program worth thousands of dollars, and a lot of people are lured into buying it because of this expectation and certainty that they acquire that this will happen to their own children. So
Oh, sorry.
yeah,
There's one thing that I wanted to respond to, because you talked about, you're not denying any spirituality and stuff like
yeah.
that.
Oh yeah,
Let's go there, because let's say, just for the sake of argument, that there's a supernatural world, that there are entities, that there are supernatural entities, and that you can interact with them, and that is all true. So how do you know that what you're interacting with is doesn't have any alternate agenda? You think self-forgiveness is going to cure that? You think, say you're an evil entity, or you're an entity that means harm, or that wants to manipulate, or wants to get access to this world, you think that they're gonna you know what they're gonna do? They're just gonna say, like, yeah, I'll do the self-forgiveness, I get access, hey, fine, like what? So there's no certainty at all that what you're interacting with has any alternate intentions that you're not detecting. You don't know if what you're seeing, if what you're projecting, maybe that is being created for you, just to use you. And so that is another side. So if you're more into the kind of spiritual world already, and you kind of believe this, and you think about this, that so what's the certainty? How can you be sure, like, what are you interacting with, and what are the intentions, and can that be masked? I mean, if there's any understanding about text, and also biblical supernatural world, or other texts, the Vedas and other things, these entities are incredibly sophisticated, can project as anything, and can get you to see anything you want. So, I mean, that's just speculation. It's just for the sake of argument. But if you think about that, I mean, yeah, that is something we just have to trust the judgment of two people that are the only ones they claim to have access to this whole thing, and change things like a god, and
like you said, you made this comment, I found it funny. You said Sunette is the only one, the holier than Jesus Mary. If you're saying this is the only portal,
yeah, that's what they say. Like the internet is the whole world, right? How would you know you're the only one? I mean, like, everything is on the internet. What nonsense is that? But yeah,
this also reminds me of the point you made when we started talking about the portal. And I found it very interesting when you said to me, how do you know for sure that this isn't just the mind of Sunette, of Susan, this woman who calls herself the portal, that is making up all of these blogs or interviews? How are you so certain that this is another being or entity speaking through her, and not her mind in any way producing or influencing that which comes out of her mouth or through her writings. And they say they make claims as to they have cross-referenced the portal, and it's what the portal is saying and doing is real. But there's articles, there's reports, there's rumors. There has been mentions of the drug usage of especially in the early days of Destiny. There were sessions where they would use drugs and do all sorts of I don't know, spiritual channeling
Yeah,
processes. and
yeah.
and you told me
So
about
yeah,
this. How do we know that this isn't just the work of the mind, that the mind could actually generate a lot of this articles and blogs and videos that we hear, and that the person who's supposedly the portal is not under some sort of influence of drugs or Bernard Pullman or some maybe even other force that could be deceiving it as well.
could enhance that. Yeah. But see, the thing is that if with the mind, I mean, as if you start giving in to other, there is something. At some point, you start to believe that, and you create this whole experience. And ecstasy, MDMA, the active ingredient, psychedelic, can enhance that as well. And so, I'm not saying something about the drug itself, but they definitely used ecstasy, and that does not mean that it's the only reason or cause, but it is definitely a possibility that it enhances kind of the experience and creates this kind of more fantastical world. But when you're dreaming, you don't know you're dreaming most of the time, so that's your mind, right, doing that. So just imagine. I mean, it's very difficult to. I think it's impossible to get any certainty about something that's afterlife, because you're not dead. I mean, how do you know you're in the afterlife? You're not dead. So, and when you're dead, how do you know you're communicating with someone who's dead? It's impossible